Hello, and welcome to Doctor Who 50 years ago. This week we're on the 10th Planet, Episode 3 by Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis. Oh, there's a new thing I can get to say every episode for that thing. Anyway, I'm Ben.
I'm Luke.
And I'm Nick.
And now we shall go into the news. There's not much news.
Well, that's because there's not much in the episode this week. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's nothing at all here.
Number one, race relations. On October the 16th in Oakland, California, the Black Panther Party was created by Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, who drafted the party's 10-point program with a list of what we want and explanations of the demands under the heading What We Believe. They chose the name and logo after getting a mail from a similarly named organisation in Lowndes County, Alabama.
Oh, goody.
So that keeps America occupied for the rest of the 60s.
Mm.
Do you know what also keeps America occupied? On October the 17th, the Hollywood Squares made its television debut as a new game show on the NBC television network, which quickly rises to be some kind of popular quiz show that people can watch and therefore ignore other interesting things that are happening, like Vietnam and stuff.
Is Hollywood Squares a big show?
It became a big show, yeah. It's one of those greats of quizzes. Sometimes it did sort of make its way over here, but
so why hasn't it been rerun endlessly on UK Gold or somewhere like that?
Because
who watches 60s game shows now?
Especially British remakes of 60s game shows.
I'm suspecting that the tapes probably don't even exist anymore.
Yeah, there's few enough copies of The Golden Shot as it is. Yeah.
Well, the thing is that America tended to keep a lot of their stuff. Like, all
they had the
episodes of
space.
The Monsters are still there. Yeah, their country was a lot bigger, so they could fit it all in.
Damn you, tectonic shift! Why did you give America space?
The tapes in America is because then they could run it for syndication and whatever, but the BBC wouldn't care so much about that. It's presumably why the BBC binned them.
And finally, on October 20th, yes, there's only 3 news bits this week. Here we go.
Wow.
Leonid Brezhnev and his guests, including Castro of Cuba, Ceausescu of Romania, Kadar of Hungary, Stop of East Germany, Tsedenbal of the Communist Party, apparently, I don't know who he is. Many members of the Communist Party were at Baikonur Cosmodrome to witness Operation Palmer 3. 5 rockets and missiles were launched, which is obviously very useful for the episode in hand.
Oh, yes.
Also 4 ICBMs and some other missiles, what war people would like to know about.
So, shall we give our opinions on the 10th Planet, Episode 3?
Yes. The answer is not going to be no.
Well, obviously I wasn't expecting the answer to be, I hate you all, let's stop this podcast now and go home.
No.
So yeah, Ben, your thoughts?
Oh, I'm first. Okay, cool. This serial turns like 90 degrees and goes, you know what? We have the Cybermen. Screw that. We're going to have a one-off with Barclay. Now, of course, we know the reason why. The script was completely and utterly rushed because Hartnell decided to have a holiday or be ill. And Ben gets his moment to shine. Hooray! I mean, he does okay. He does get thrown off the end of a gantry, but ultimately, it kept me interested, which is definitely what it needed to do as a filler episode, an emergency filler episode. Yeah, it was good.
It was all right. The first 2 weeks are really good, and this one, it sort of loses its focus a bit. It feels like quite a different story. I'm not such a fan of it ditching the Cybermen and instead going, that character that we have that's all right but not that great, Cutler. Yeah, let's make him the focus of the episode.
I was going to say, don't you dare diss Barclay. I like him.
No. I mean, there are some interesting things about him. I guess you could contrast with the Cybermen.
We want your facial hair.
Overall, I think this is how I remembered it being, the serial losing its way a little bit. And I think the fourth episode carries on that trend. So my hopes for next week are decreased from this as well.
I'm going to continue my little fanboying of this story. I really liked the first two episodes. This one I quite liked. Like, this was a very decent episode for me. I thought that while it doesn't go forward with the Cybermen plot, but it sort of goes sideways, but sideways enough to be interesting. And I think that if in the final episode it brings the two parts together, then what we have is a very well fleshed out villain in a very well fleshed out setting with some very well fleshed out characters who have been done in episodes 2, 1 and 3 respectively. So it has the potential to pull it all off amazingly. Whether or not it does, I can't remember, and it's probably a good thing that I can't remember. But yeah, I really like this one.
I mean, it suffers from having no heart. Let's be honest here. The Doctor not being in this is a bad thing.
Yes.
As much as you say that, he must have had 10 lines in the first two episodes. I honestly didn't miss him. He did so little in those first two.
Yeah, but those lines that he does say really do add impact to it. I think had he been able to be contrived to be in this episode, it would make it just that little bit better. But I guess because there's some lines that you can tell where Ben's explaining stuff to Polly or whatever. Obviously, that's the Doctor meant to be explaining it to the companions, but hey ho.
Ultimately, we will discover why episode 3 turned the way it did next week when I look through my complete history novel.
All shall be revealed
when we get there.
Let's move on to our detailed breakdown of how this would have been received 50 years ago and how it would be made now differently. Although I think that this episode is so fixated on the tropes of World War II that you can't make it now without completely redoing it. You'd have to focus it on ISIS or something like that. You basically have to go the Zygon invasion route. Because as far as I'm concerned, this is a homage to World War II stories. You have machine gun nests, you have a doomsday weapon with the A-bomb stand-in, you have rockets, and when the Cybermen come, it sounds like a bombing raid, you have radar. It's a World War II story. It's completely different.
I'd agree with you. It's sort of like World War II story mixed in with a few elements of sci-fi. So it feels very 1950s, doesn't it? It does. It feels outdated for even 1966.
There are a few moments of charm. One that stands in my head is Cutler's son, who is aptly named Terry. Don't ask me why. When he's in his Zeus 5 space rocket, he's told that the Cybermen are 30 miles below him. He then looks down out of the capsule as if he can see 30 miles below him. Hilarious. But that's probably due to his characterization as a bit dim. So yes, there is a lack of Doctor right from the off, which turns this story into Cutler versus the world, or at least against human decency, in which he proceeds to be an old military man who advocates the use of violence versus the young pacifist generation and Dr. Barclay. So there's this generational conflict yet again.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
Cutler assumes control and wants to destroy the Cybermen with a Z-bomb. Immediately goes to his superiors back in Geneva. Here comes that international theme again, folks. With people talking in foreign languages and everything. Ooh.
No, accents. Not even languages. It's just accents.
Yeah. Including that secretary who we keep talking about. She's apparently Italian, I think. Thank God she didn't say Allons-y. That would have been disastrous.
Luke,
But we do have an Osterhagen key in this episode, so it's
yes. Oh no.
very RTD-ish.
It's not good. Yeah. Wigner goes up in my estimations because he's taken his jacket off and he looks better in this episode. I'm just the one who looks at all the eye candy in these Doctor Who stories. It's ridiculous. Yeah. But Wigner is your typical higher up who's a bit of an idiot because he's completely played by Cutler, who then assumes permission to use the Z-bomb from him, even though he completely does not have permission.
He details their problems, and he lists 3 problems, and his first one is, my son is in danger. That's the first thing he says. Then he says the Cybermen, and then he says the energy drain of the Earth. So it's interesting that his priorities are, first of all, himself, his son, then
family,
the other, the enemy, the other people, and then the concern is with everyone else on Earth, the energy drain. Which I find is, in reality, really, his priorities should be in the opposite order, shouldn't they, really?
It's all a sense of perspective in this episode, because Polly goes, yeah, let's destroy the Cybermen, screw your son.
Yeah, I know, that seems a bit weird, that line doesn't make much sense, but...
No, it's completely out of character.
But in fairness, that is kind of technically the right thing to do. You save the Earth or save one guy's son. But this is a good contrast against the Cybermen, where they definitely would have opposite priorities. The energy drain.
Yes.
Energy drain is most important to them. Then it's the humans are a secondary priority. So, and then things like, we're looking after my son. They wouldn't even understand. They didn't understand why they cared about the rocket before. So it's an interesting contrast of different moralities.
Why are they listing the stakes? Because that's literally what he's doing. He's telling the audience, this is what's going on in the episode. This is why it's intriguing. Ooh, tension. I put recap next to a question mark.
Yeah.
But to me, it just sounds very expositionary.
Well, I think, like I said, the reason they're doing it is to draw a line under how Cutler's thinking is complete opposite to the Cybermen's. He's completely emotionally driven, whilst the Cybermen are cold, logical creatures.
Yeah.
I'd argue that episode 3 out of 4 of these 4-parter stories are typically very difficult to write. Because you need to build to that climax, but not explode too early.
So when Ben is taken away, and Polly's like, how can I be useful? And so Cutler asks her that. And her first response is, I can make coffee for you. That's literally the only way she thinks she can be useful. And it's the only way. And they all seem to think, yeah, you can make us coffee. We don't mind.
Yeah, I kind of counter-argue that it's also part of her plan to wheedle in on the conversations of trying to stop the Z-bomb and then get Barclay on their side, but obviously...
She could have done something other than, I'll just fetch you the coffee.
She was originally a secretary, that's all she did in 66.
Well, I know,
no, actually.
But it's just very... she's basically the only female character, and I think she is the only female character in this, other than the secretary.
Major, yeah.
And she's got given a very weak role in it, really. I mean, I'll make you coffee. It's a bit... That's quite regressive, really.
So all our lovely scientist people, including Dyson, who seems to become a toady, fuse the bomb. Bombs are always wonderful in Doctor Who. Cutler basically says he's scared, but he has no choice, which is a typical military response, really. Admit fear, but admit you have no other choice. So, yeah, Polly leans on Barclay, who snaps at her in typical male chauvinist fashion, but then apologises afterwards, because he's stressed out and doesn't exactly want a bomb to explode and wipe out half of the Earth.
Mm.
So, in the end, Barclay comes to Ben and Polly's aid, and luckily, Ben has been locked up in the room with a soldier who is terrible at his duty, and also has an air vent which has access to the bomb. Or at least the wires that make the bomb go whoosh into the air. That's the technical term.
So we have a reprise of Ben being in room, Ben escaping from room, basically.
Yes. But he escapes in the most wonderful fashion because Barclay shines. Because he says, wait a minute, I know how this room works, and proceeds to tell us how the room works. With diagrams and everything. Yeah. I love it.
And also, I just love how, yes, I designed this bit of the complex. Oh, here's this conveniently sized vent that conveniently connects this room to the bomb room. Yes, of course, that's brilliant, isn't it?
This is the bit where I can smell the rewrite, because Ben already knows about that air vent. So what I think should have happened is that Ben discovered it earlier, and then he tells the Doctor about it. And then so the distraction, maybe the Doctor does the distraction. Instead, we have two scenes of Ben discovering the air vent, which smells fishy to me.
The Cybermen land, another spaceship, another 6 of them, and they're immediately mown down. That's your Cybermen this episode, folks.
Yeah, I don't like this. This particular scene is really rubbish because immediately it's cheapened the Cybermen a bit, I think, that they're that easy.
To the point where one bravely runs away out of shot. It's hilarious.
You say that, but that's what really makes this look like a World War II movie for me. Because you have that POV through that machine gun nest. And so I think at the time this scene would have a lot more impact. The fact that they're mercilessly mowing them down in an ambush.
Yeah. Cutler's storming about, arming the bomb, whilst Ben, meanwhile, is in another room trying to disarm the bomb. Barclay's trying to, keep Cutler from entering the room where Ben is for disarming the bomb. Cutler manages to get in and throws Ben off a gantry in hilarious fashion. Almost with superhuman strength.
Yeah.
Which is not bad for an irritated Ronald Reagan.
You just gotta love all of the physical fight scenes in quotation marks there in 60s Doctor Who, where they're also hammy and cheesy, aren't they? Here the Cybermen kill their victims with karate chops, and here he just flips him over the rail, like that wobbles slightly as well. It's all perfect.
Yes,
really,
yeah.
It's brilliant. And of course it makes the action seem very artificial, but that sort of was neat. Like I feel like they were doing that so that they didn't get too in trouble with the with parents.
The thing is that, like, I've watched so many old shows and bad kung fu movies that didn't even register to me as I'm being unrealistic. So maybe someone from the 60s wouldn't have found it as hilarious or wrong as we do.
You have the countdown overlaid onto the screen.
Mm.
Was this a normal thing back then that they would do, or is this kind of abnormal and unusual?
There's no real way of knowing.
I've certainly not seen it much in Doctor Who before.
No, it's fairly unique.
Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting and very well directed. They have the idea of having the countdown up on it. And I feel like that would really bring home about the whole idea of rockets taking off, and that would have been very of the time, people would have been...
It's there to add to the tension.
Yeah, and also people would have been so used to this T-minus 10 seconds, that sort of thing being said a lot, because every few months there was some new American rocket going up, or in this week, Soviet space rockets going up. It was an everyday, or not quite everyday event for people back then.
Once again, it's playing to the audience's general perceptions.
I want to say about this scene that, what was it, 9 years later in Genesis of the Daleks, pretty much the same storyline happens with pretty much the same cliffhanger, which is Genesis solution. There's the bit in it where they have to shoot the rocket. The Carleds the Thals are shooting the rocket at the Carleds. There's innocent people in there. We can't kill them. So the Doctor tries to sabotage the rocket, or in this case Ben, well, it would have been the Doctor, and the episode ends on a countdown to, I've sent Sarah and Harry in there. And so you basically have the exact same sort of setup, but 9 years later, and they're both in this very bleak war historical mode. So it's interesting how what applies here in 66 is still being applied in 75. It shows the carrying nature of this story and the themes that it's
If we
exploring.
take the two writers, Terry Nation and then Kit Pedler and Jerry Davis, both seem to be connected to the sort of World War II area, because obviously they would have both lived through it. So I can only assume it comes from shared background.
Well, anyone over the age of 25 or 30 would have some first-hand memory of it, wouldn't they?
And then, of course, there's the younger generation who don't really want that burden of war on them, which is what leads to many parts of the generational conflict.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, you're right. It is the companions who are both quite young, the youth, as it were, who are anti-war here, and then you've got Cutler representing the establishment and the older generation. But you've also got Barclay, who's older generation, but takes the young people's side, and he sort of, I think, represents the sort of like university professor, intelligentsia sort of person who's anti-war and quite left-leaning because he's highly educated. But you've got the majority of older generation represented by Cutler, who are more conservative and are more willing to take the war route.
I still like this story even after we've pulled it apart.
It's still good.
It's all right. This one's all right. I don't like it. I think the first two are really good, and this one's okay to me. It's not. It doesn't cheapen the first two, but it's not as good in my opinion.
It did a damn good job under the circumstances it was given.
Yeah.
And that will probably our feelings for that will only increase when we learn about said circumstances in more detail next week.
So,
but
onwards to the endwards.
Onwards to the endwards. The countdown is reaching 0 as we run out of actual footage for the 10th planet. Yes. Join us next week for probably a reconstruction.
Join us on the 21st of January, which is when our next footage one will be. There is no footage from now until January.
Episode 2 of The Underwater Menace.
Wow.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
3 fleeting glimpses of moving footage.
Yeah.
The last we saw of Hartnell was, of course, not Hartnell.
Yeah.
Sad.
That's the way the world works, folks. But we shall return with the concluding part of the 10th planet. Thank you very much for watching and listening. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes. We are also on YouTube and Facebook and other internet-y things. Yes. But there we are. Thank you very much for watching Doctor Who 50 years ago. I've been Ben.
I've been Luke.
And I've been Nick.
Thank you. and goodbye.